That's right, all things Scottish. Our slogan is, if it's no Scottish, it's crap.
Mike Mars, not Scottish, of course, Canadian from Scarborough, Toronto, but parents weren't Scottish. They were from Liverpool, English. But he puts on that accent, which is sort of convincing. Now, next week, the people of Scotland vote on the subject of independence. The coalition supporting this notion and this nation, I suppose, is a strange one. The hard left, Braveheart watchers, Republicans of Irish descent, wealthy dreamers, and the far right. John Robson joins us from Ottawa to discuss. Not very long ago, John, it seemed impossible. There were around 30%, maybe 35% who, just for a lark, would say we'll leave. Now the latest poll says 51%. I think it's going to decline quite rapidly when other people are frightened by this, but it's still very threatening.
Well, it is. I mean, it's only one poll. There are others that show that no side is slightly ahead, but there isn't time for people to get frightened by the consequences. The yes side is riding a wave of, in my view, completely inane emotion. I cannot understand it. Their vision of Scotland doesn't seem to me to have anything to do with Scotland. There's no oath of Arbroath there. There's no evoking Scotland's tradition. And because if you did that, you'd realize that Scotland achieved its true greatness inside the United Kingdom. And finally, Boris Johnson, who actually has been speaking clearly on this at a time when the no side hasn't, really, I think, wrote a marvelous column that appeared today where he said, without Scotland, there's no Britain. And without Britain, England won't know what it is. Northern Ireland, Wales, they won't know what they are. I don't think the Scots will know what they are. They are an integral part of Britain. And if they're not part of Britain, I mean, this idea we're going to have a Republican constitution, a European-style parliament, we're going to have the 1980s welfare state suspended forever in midair despite the lack of financing, you know, a Belgium in kilts or something like that. I see nothing to inspire anybody there. And the idea that a sour and petty resentment against the English, as you know, as Boris Johnson put it, you know, Johnson needed his Boswell and Boswell needed his Johnson. Neither of them, without the other, would have been anything. It is just, to me, astounding that the Scots would walk away from all of that. And for what?
Well, hold on just one moment. I know Boris Johnson, I know British politics. Boris Johnson wrote a very good piece today, not about keeping the union together, but about why David Cameron should be fired and why Boris Johnson, who's going to run as an MP, should be the next Prime Minister. That entire article was really saying, make me your leader. Whatever happens, he will benefit. Look, there are several disasters here that we could face, I think, if we care about Britain. One is that the union breaks up. The other two are, well, let's talk about one of them, that the vote is no, but only just. Whatever happens now, it's going to be very problematic. I agree with you, there's a lot of vacuous emotionalism here. But also there is a strong socialist tradition that says we will never have a socialist government if we're part of the United Kingdom. There's also a lot of people of Irish descent who support a Republican move. I mean, look, for example, at the way that Scotland and its major cities have reacted towards Gaza in a way far more left-wing and radical than the English ever would. It is a different country with different political aspirations.
Well, sure it is, but that's part of the delight. The United Kingdom is a successful multicultural state, with the exception of most of Catholic Ireland, which I do not dispute was an 8th century historical disaster for them. And their independence was, I think, greeted with a relief on both sides. But the idea, the Scots, the thin red line at Balaclava, the entrepreneurs, the statesmen, the administrators, the flowering of Scottish genius, that all of this didn't represent a triumph of Scottishness, not a negation of it. Maybe that Mike Myers piece that you played right at the very beginning. How did the world come to feel that if you weren't Scottish, you'd missed something important? Who felt that in the 16th century? Except probably some people in Scotland. But then eventually these are people who stand their ground, who believe in themselves, who are willing to assert their identity, even the ridiculous stuff like haggis and kilts, with a fierce pride the rest of us should emulate, and with something to point to, from Walter Scott to Alexander Graham Bell to Andrew Carnegie, to say, what other nation as small as Scotland put as large and positive a mark on the world? Sir John A. Macdonald, one of something like 15 million people outside Scotland who bear the name Macdonald. This was not a diaspora of refugees, but of people shaping the world. The first house with electricity in the whole world was in Glasgow. What are you going to turn your back on that for? What? So you can be the Labour Party forever?
This is how they would respond. And you are, look, the Scottish Enlightenment was after 1707. The Scottish Enlightenment, the greatness of Scottish philosophers and writers was very much after Union. Was that accidental? I would say no. I think the country was empowered by its partnership, its love affair, its love-hate affair with England. But they would say to you, when we tried to form our own little empire, it was the English who stopped it. When you look at we're the most successful Occidental group in the diaspora. No one else can compete with us. That has nothing to do with England. If you give us a chance, it will be OK. I think they're wrong. I think this will be a disaster. I think you'll have many people, whatever happens actually after the vote, who will feel that they haven't been listened to. If the country is independent, what happens to the Protestant-Catholic divide, which we don't have in Canada, which they don't have in England, but they have in Northern Ireland and they have in Scotland? We could also argue that some of the harshness of Presbyterian imperialism, if you like, in Northern Ireland and Canada has been the result of the Scots rather than the English. But now there's no argument left. It's either Scotland is allowed to be free or somehow you don't understand what the Scots really want and need. I think the argument has been debased at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was Blackstone described his country as the only one in the universe where the freedom was the very end of the Constitution. That was in 1765, after the Act of Union. The Scots were freer under the British than they ever would have been without Britain. But again, I suppose the vote is yes by 1%. You're going to destroy the United Kingdom with 49% having said no. Whereas you look at Quebec, they lost a referendum by the narrowest imaginable margin. That did not sow the seeds of bitterness. But suppose the Scots do become independent, get a Republican constitution, incarnate the welfare state, write it in stone in their constitution, get rid of the monarchy with a 1% margin of victory.
I don't think the monarchy would. I do not believe the Scots could ever, even if they wanted to, form a republic, because there's so much. You've got to understand the obsession is a pejorative word, but the love for the monarchy and also what it represents. You have many people who still wave the Union flag. They believe in it very much, even if they don't like the English particularly. I mean, you go to Ibrox, you see 50,000 people screaming about not being Irish, being part of Britain. They don't like the English, but they don't want to be anything else apart from British. I didn't think this was plausible or possible. Now, I just wonder. It's going to be a fascinating, rather frightening few days. John, we'll speak to you about this again, maybe next week after the vote. Thank you very much indeed.